Welcome to the Adda, where curious minds gather for deep, intentional conversations that spark new understanding. I'm your host, Deepa Mirchandani, founder of the Deep and Meaningful Consultancy. Much like an ancient salon or an Indian Adda, we believe the biggest challenges of our time demand more than quick takes. They call for nuanced dialogue, deliberate questioning, and a willingness to explore the uncomfortable. Adda is the Hindi word for that space where diverse perspectives collide and transform understanding, hopefully leading to more conscious action. In this episode, we talk to Nathan Ardaiz. He's a holistic life coach and facilitator, championing compassionate communication, grounded in heart-led presence and deep listening, supporting individuals and groups to reconnect with all parts of themselves, mental, emotional, physical, creative, spiritual, and to rewrite stories that hold them back. Nathan specializes in non-violent communication, guiding people, teams, and groups to communicate more authentically, navigate conflict, and cultivate greater empathy and understanding in everyday interactions. We covered so much in this conversation, as you'll hear, not least starting with my own struggle to show up non-violently when confronted with a difficult conversation on a polarizing topic. We get into the challenges and frustrations of talking to people with different opinions, and why ultimately it's worth doing, despite it being hard. We step into imagining the power of clarity and articulating what we need, and the freedom of asking for it, and what the knock-on effects of such an act can mean for crafting the world that we desire. We also explored what it takes to really understand what it means to listen deeply to our own mind, body and souls, and the reactions that compel us to show up fully, authentically, and completely. Nathan is a treat to share time with, and do check out the show notes to the link to his work and his upcoming course on compassionate communication. I left this conversation much more grounded and hopeful. I hope it touches you too. You've made me think a lot in the last few weeks. And so I really want to get into this idea of not just nonviolent communication and what that is, but what I felt in me over the last few weeks is an awareness of how I respond to things and what my expectations are of other people. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something that's shifted in me. And so, yeah, I'm kind of keen to explore it all with you and get your take.
Sure. I'm excited. And thanks again for having me. And I'm happy to hear that whatever you experienced has left you with some reflections and some change in perspective. I'm curious to hear what you noticed. What you said, I recognize a change of expectations in people, or what I expect from people.
I think, well, let's start with this idea of what nonviolent communication is. Mm-hmm. Because as I've been listening to more and watching more and reading more about this topic, particularly in a world and particularly in a country that's really polarized right now, and the conversations that are happening around me and happening that I'm kind of engaged in, it's wanting to show up with tolerance. And I've built a whole career around wanting to have conversations, but then it's really hard to do with grace. And so the example that I'll kind of present was last week. We've had a ruling in the UK regarding a Palestinian charity, which had always partaken in peaceful protest, which has had a lockdown on it by the UK government. And so I happened to be in the part of town where the Royal Courts of Justice are, and there was a protest happening. And the person I was with was, oh God, look at these people. And so my reaction was not just about what's going on in Palestine, but it was also about freedom of expression in this country and peaceful protests in this country and our right to that. And so we were walking down the streets And my automatic desire was to stop and participate and show support, but I wasn't the right person to do that. But then it was as you're walking down the street having a conversation about who started things on October the 7th. And I was just like, whoa. And so, but physically, I found myself having a reaction
Mm.
and a bit of a shutting down. And it didn't go entirely well, the conversation. And then afterwards, I was thinking, what do I need? What did you need from that situation?
Mm. Yeah.
And so I'm not going to tell you what I decided.
Okay.
Because let's start with your take and then maybe a reflection and my little freak out on the street.
Sometimes we need to freak out, I think. I think that's okay. That in and of itself is quite a radical moment, isn't it? To say, actually, what did I need in that moment? Say, okay, maybe I could feel my body, I could feel tension, I could feel anger, maybe I could feel rage. Maybe I was really pissed off, and what would help me just be okay? Because actually, me responding in a certain way or me getting in a fight or whatever is not gonna solve this issue, this macro issue. In fact, maybe it makes it worse, right? So the question is like, what kind of world do I want to live in? I mean, ultimately, you're asking yourself, what kind of state do I want to be in? And state is a physical place. It's the way you are in your body, and that's not a coincidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
That your internal state is your state that you live in, is the place you live in. And so through that question, what did I need? What kind of state did I prefer actually? You are asking yourself, actually, what kind of world do I want to live in?
Mm.
And then you have your own kind of protest. It's your own protest, right? You don't have to go there and stand in front of the court of justice to have your own protest. And it's a really beautiful example because again, it's a radical act of affection. If you say, okay, well, actually, what kind of world do I want to live in? What kind of state do I want to be in?
Mm-hmm.
And again, maybe rage for a moment is necessary to feel it, to experience it, to sit in it. The question here ultimately is, what is my relationship to that emotion? What is my relationship to that experience in my body? And how do I want to react or how do I want to respond?
But when we talk about conversations, these are two-way dialogues. They're
Mm-hmm.
two-way exchanges. And so there's so much going on like in that moment from a neurological, from a mental, from a physical. You're walking down a street, you're trying to stay upright, you're trying to navigate traffic lights, you're in central London, you're trying to have a conversation, you're also looking at what's happening around you. I was very conscious of this kind of feeling inside me. So there's so many things going on. Being nice and thinking about the other and the conversation
Yeah.
is also like it's tricky to do. And so it did get me thinking about and because I think I'm, constantly thinking about how we create spaces for good conversations.
Mm.
And it's obviously a work in progress. I'm a work in progress, clearly. It's where's the room for conversation? Because there's dialogue, because I can be thinking about what I need and what state I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't there a duality to conversation of also being conscious of the other party or parties in that space?
Yeah. Well, fundamentally, we are always in relationship. So we are in relationship with our environment. We're in relationship with our food. We're in relationship with time. We're in relationship with our partner. So we only experience ourselves through relationship, right? So I think that fundamentally that's important because you don't. No one lives on an island. And actually, that is the way in which you recognize yourself. You only recognize yourself through relationship. I guess from the perspective of Marshall Rosenberg, or this kind of philosophy of nonviolent communication, you ultimately are only responsible for yourself, for your own emotions, for your own needs.
Mm-hmm.
And fundamentally, there's a question of, with this person or this thing, do I want to connect? Do I want to move closer? Do I want to be in more intimate relationship with this person or thing or habit or way of being? It's all one thing. It's all relationship. Or do I need to separate from this thing? Do I need to distance myself from this person, from this way of being, this habit, etc. This where I live.
Mm.
So we are constantly in this. We have this choice. Do I want to move closer, or do I want to disconnect? Do I want to move away? And I don't know. Obviously, I don't know this relationship or what your intention is for that relationship. But Howard Zinn said you can't be neutral on a moving train. So we always have this choice. You can't be in the middle. And and this is not something theoretical or philosophical. You can recognize this in every instant and every moment of the day. So you, especially with people, I mean, it becomes especially clear when you are actually with people. But you can recognize in your tone, in your energy, it truly in your intention, in the way your body's moving. It all becomes very clear when you take time to ask the questions that you've asked, which is, okay, how am I feeling? What did I need? And because you're building a sensitivity, you're building an awareness of what is my energetic experience in that moment. Did I say that thing in a way because I want to say something ironic to make this person recognize that they are communicating in a certain way, and through that irony, I'm communicating a fear or an anger or a frustration or a whatever. You can recognize that.
But there are particular topics that are triggering.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that word deliberately because I think it's an overused word to some extent recently. But I use it deliberately because it is that reaction, right? There are trigger topics like conflict. And in this particular case, genocide. It's more than conflict, in my opinion. And things like politics, incredibly divisive. But I want to be able to step into conversations, hold conversations, and curate conversations where we disagree.
Yeah.
To be able to find commonality. And it's interesting to me how do we hold that space?
Yeah.
And these practices, recognizing that it's hard and that you're going to get pissed, and that's okay to get pissed.
Yeah.
But it's got to be more than just intention of the participants, whether that's, however many people that is, of creating space for that friction and for the edges.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where magic happens. And so, do you see what I mean? And it's
yeah.
Because your point about how do we respond, like, do you want to be part of that space? How do you want to hold that relationship? The easy thing to say is, screw them. I'm not going to hang out with these people who have certain views, right? I don't want to read the media that I don't agree with. And I'm of the thinking, and this is training from like 25 years ago working at Amnesty. It was, you always read the newspapers where there is dissident and there's disagreement. Right? You want to know. And so you step into that space.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what's the best collaboration you've ever been a part of? You don't need to give me a specific, you don't have to give me a specific project or a specific moment, but like you can recognize, oh yeah, I know the relationship. I know the relationship where I could say an idea and they might not fully agree with the idea, but they take the idea and they play with it and they say, well, what about this? Or what do you, or they ask, what do you mean by that? What do you need from that? Or what do you, when you say that, what's the experience you're trying to deliver? Whatever it is. I guess my point is that in that flow of collaboration, there's disagreements, constant disagreement. But fundamentally, we have the same intention, which is design something really beautiful together and to create a really good experience or whatever it is that you're, whatever the objective is. You could be designing a program, a service, a system, a product, a business. Fundamentally, it's about saying, okay, if you want to collaborate and create something beautiful, which I believe is our purpose here, our collective purpose here, is to be of service through the creation of beautiful things. Like that's, I fundamentally believe that is our purpose, and we are growing in that direct. All of us are kind of individually, we accept or we don't accept what we need to learn to move in that direction. That's a kind of moment to moment growth that we have the opportunity for. But what I would say is in that moment of collaboration, again, there's constant disagreement, if you want to call it that, about what is the way to get there. But in really beautiful, true, open collaboration, you're kind of throwing an idea out and you're really open to hear what the other person feels or believes because you respect and care for them and you trust them in a really, really good in a really idyllic collaboration. And then there is this exchange because, again, you fundamentally believe and you know in your heart that that person wants the best for you and wants the best for the project and wants to arrive in a beautiful service. And I would say that it's no different for any other relationship. And the blockages that we experience or the ways that we're not able to be in that kind of openness, I'm not saying that that's easy. I'm not saying it's hard or easy. I'm just saying we are, as you use the word trigger, we're generally triggered in these kind of dialogues for many reasons. We have our own conditioning, our own fears, our own experiences as children, and even in adulthood. And so fundamentally what my work is about, and I guess if you want to kind of specifically talk about nonviolent communication or compassionate communication, is about being able to put yourself or work to get yourself in that state of collaboration, or to be in your body in a way that you actually want to collaborate or that you choose to collaborate. Or if you are triggered or you experience a strong emotion, you have ways to engage with that emotion in a useful way that can still bring you closer to the person, even if you're in a lot of pain, if that's what you need, if that's the purpose, is to be in connection, in intimacy, in collaboration. And I could imagine that conversation with you and your friend on the street, and I could imagine your friend says this thing that's quite direct about, okay, well, what happened on October 7th or whatever? And maybe you can recognize this as well, that there is something that he or she is asking you to look at in them. It's not about it's not about October 7th, whatever. They're kind of projecting something at you to get you to see them, right? For whatever part of them it's not important, but you can immediately recognize it's not about Israel versus Palestine in that moment. There's something fearful in them that they need you to see, and they might not be able to consciously voice that.
Yeah.
But what the practice says, what the NVC practice and compassion, what that practice says is that, okay, this person is experiencing some difficult emotion and I can recognize it in their energy. It's not about me, actually. There's something happening in them. And there's an insecurity or there's a fear, there's an anger, and yeah, it could be a number of things. It's not important for me to figure out.
Or even just like a base belief system, right? It may not come from anger or fear or any of those things. It may just be a fundamental belief, right? Of what they believe to be true. Because it may just be a very rational, hang on a second. Because in my head, I'm thinking, you're completely nutso. But from their side, they're thinking, you naive fool.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that reaction goes both ways. Yet we may both feel that we're sitting in our true in fact.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the question that comes to mind is what's the implication, right? So what's the implication of that person being right versus you being right, you know? Like, is that person Palestinian? Is that person Israeli? Does that person have any stake in that
Oh,
conflict? No. Right? So
no.
the implication of being right is yeah, what I mean, that's for me, what is the implication of being right, you know, in that moment?
Are you asking me to answer
Yeah.
that? Yeah,
Well, I mean,
I think the implication of being, I think just a, it is just the being right.
yeah,
And there's nothing more to it. It's just,
yeah.
I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah, my worldview, the way I perceive the world, the way that I understand truth is right here, and you're
Mm.
not. And it's not because I have family there and I'm vested in,
Hmm.
I'm personally vested in people being okay. Though as a human, of course, I want people to be okay. But we could pick any number of kind of conflicts and have a debate about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think we would have got into that conversation had we not walked past a demonstration.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and
It was circumstantial that
yeah.
we were having that conversation.
And I guess only you know the energy that you experience in that moment, um, about what maybe that person was trying to get you to see. But I guess ultimately, again, it sounds like the conversation is really just about, okay, can we get to some kind of truth here? Can we get to like, can we come to some agreement about what is happening in the world? Is that right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I think fundamentally it's interesting because it's okay. So I come home and my partner says, "Oh, you know, did you notice that uh, the thing's not clean, you know?" And I say, "No, no, it's clean. I can see that it's clean, you know." She has a different truth about what's clean,
Yeah.
and so we go back and forth. I could be in that moment. I could be annoyed because no, I just cleaned it 2 days ago, and you can't just recognize that I took the time to clean it, you know. And she that might be going on in my body,
Yeah.
even unconsciously, and I might kind of, what do you mean? You know, what do you mean it's not clean? You know, like this kind of it comes out really subtly because it's a natural response. But she can feel it because she's sensitive and she's intuitive and she's thinking, why is he angry? It's clearly not clean, you know. So these are these kind of these micro interactions, these micro experiences that are happening in an attempt, as you're describing in this interaction. Okay, what's the truth here? What are we collectively experiencing? Um, what's the world we live in? Do we want to live in the same world actually? So do the world that you see, is that the world that I see? And maybe it's not. Maybe we go in other directions, and that's okay. Um, and so it's an interesting example because it's happening in all of these interactions. And it's, again, it's the question of, do we want to move closer? Do we want to build a collective truth? Or do we want to, okay, actually, I can recognize, and we can all recognize that relationships, again, patterns, behaviors, ways of being that just don't resonate. And we eventually kind of, okay, it's okay. We can just go separate ways. And
And I think and I'm gonna want us to kind of rewind a bit because I like the fact that I've given you my real life case study. I feel like I've had a very good therapy session. But it was very funny because when I was pondering this on Friday night and over the weekend, I was like, oh, Nathan's gonna enjoy this one. I thought, oh, here's a real world example. So I'm glad that we've got the chance to talk about it. Um,
that's good. It's a good example.
but there's something about this stepping in, like, your point about just now about we can go our separate ways. And I think I do think that that's okay. But my instinctive reaction is we can't keep doing that. If we want to create a world that is better, that recognizes interdependence and recognizes interconnection, then we can't just be choosing these bubbles
Yeah.
and confirmation biases of the media that we read, the people we follow, the books that we engage, authors, musicians, activists, all
Yeah.
these people that, like you said, everything's relational, but all these different types of relationships and informational relationships that we want to have, we can't keep living in bubbles. And so part of me is very kind of, right, I'm done. Like it's fine. Life's like I want to work with people that I want to play with and I want to enjoy collaborating with and all of those things.
Mhm.
But there is a big part of my kind of my heart that feels like we have to step into trying to have these conversation and spaces with people
Yeah.
that we don't necessarily agree with because there's got to be commonality and common ground.
Yeah. 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 Well, I think it's really well said. I think it's correct. I mean, you can, what you just said there is most marriages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most marriages or intimate relationships get to a point where someone will think, I have to leave. I just can't do this anymore. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what they are being offered there is, or what we're all being offered in that moment is, okay, do I want to take responsibility for this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to take responsibility for this thing? And fundamentally, that is the question of growth and evolution and change. Is um, so, for example, you're in a relationship, and one thing that happens a lot is assumptions about roles in relationships. So it's like, okay, your role is to make money, to bring the money home, and my role is to cook the food, to clean the dishes, et cetera, et cetera. That's a very kind of example, but we have these expectations about what this person is offering or providing us or what the exchange is, right?
Sure.
And very often we get to a point where that changes, that shifts. So we could be that maybe we had a child, or that we've moved house, or that you've got a new job,
Mm-hmm.
schedule changes, but the role hasn't changed because we haven't discussed it.
Yep.
So the assumption remains the same, and we end up kind of overlapping or crossing over into spaces where we shouldn't be or where we should be, or we don't move into new spaces. And then usually you get conflicts and people think, okay, is this right for me actually or whatever. And what I would say is the majority of the time it's an inside job, right? It's an opportunity for you to see where you are meant to heal, essentially, where you are meant to go into, explore, and to learn and to grow. And I would say that most of the time the invitation is to go inward, right? Rather than say, okay, I'm going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time it's offering the pain, the struggle, the tension, the frustration, whatever it is that's triggering some emotion is an invitation into the body, into where we have left to heal. And the beautiful thing about relationships, specifically with other people, is that we are almost always given the thing that we need to heal or to learn or to look at, and vice versa. So the person
Mm-hmm.
across from us, the person across from us is also showing us the thing that we're meant to learn or look at in this particular moment. Even if I'm doing a coaching session, almost in all of my coaching sessions,
Mm-hmm.
I'm reflecting something back to my client. They are seeing something that they haven't seen before from a new perspective. Usually I'm making it quite conscious because I can
Yeah.
recognize, verbalize it. And then I ask, okay, is this being mirrored now to you? And not in such words, but we go through that. We go through
Sure.
the process. The same thing is happening to me. And I'm observing and recognizing and hearing things that are present in my life at the moment and things that I have to look at.
Mm.
It's always an exchange. And the same thing happens in every relationship. You know, like my partner is extremely intuitive. I think I'm rather intuitive, but it's a different kind of intuition. It's a clarity of insight that we have different ways of coming into truth and to clarity. And she just has just a particular way it's really powerful and it's really direct. It's different than the way that I come to truth.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things that she's showing me through this way of seeing the world that I have to experience. And sometimes it's painful for me because I'm not used to it, and because it also in some ways tracks certain ways of being with my mom, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on purpose. She is showing up in that way on purpose, not because she consciously is aware of what my trigger points are, but because we were meant to be together right now at this point in history, in this point in time, because this is where we are in our growth. And
Mm-hmm.
we offer each other these kind of subtle learning moments, but most of them are inspired by tension or fear or anger, or that's when we know, okay, there's something for me here to look at. And it's not a new idea. Jung and
Of course.
idea of going into the darkness, going into the wound is not a new idea. But the point is not to understand it here.
Yeah.
The point is to be able to be with it in the moment of tension, to experience it in the body, and to create a different relationship with it in the body. That's the difference, right? It's not about reading a book and saying, okay, I understand this idea of, which is the foundation as well for learning and awareness.
The stepping back is the how do I get intuitive and with my body? In order to be aware, in order to be able to see it, then to be able to deal with it and to then show up. Because all of those things have to happen concurrently in that sequence. And this is the bit that I really like. I like the fact that there's, and like I said this to you when we first met, there's something deeply spiritual about this. And I like that there's a combination of the practical with that spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you talk a little bit about the pillars, what the process is made up of? Because we've got to this stage where I've hit you with a case study, but actually maybe it'd be quite nice to talk a little bit about the head part.
Yeah.
So that we can get into the spiritual part.
Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, it's a 4-step process. You observe something in your environment, in a relationship, something that you can objectively describe. I heard you say this. I saw you do this. You did this 3 times. You try to identify that emotion in your body, that thing, not caused, because the causation we'll explore in a moment, but that you experience in your body when you observe this thing. What is the sensation? What is the emotion? And then what is the thing that you need instead of that thing? So I need us to connect. I need us to trust. I need trust. I need clarity. I need creativity. I need to be creative. I need to work with my hands, whatever it is. And then there's a request. So because I need this thing, I'm asking you, I'm not demanding you, I'm asking you because you're an autonomous soul here, and as am I, and you have free will. I'm asking that every 3 days we do this thing, or I'm asking that every other week you and I go to this place. So it's a very specific request based on that need. So I need to create, I need to work with my hands. So I'm requesting that every week I have 1 full day to myself and I can just stay by myself. And is that okay? Can I just do that? And then there's a conversation. So no, I can't do that. It's not I just can't do it because I need this other thing. Okay. So we've started a dialogue. We've started a process of understanding. Okay. How do we both get what we need then? And I would say that Marshall Rosenberg doesn't believe in compromise. So now this is the non-duality of life, of existence, of the soul, right? There is compromise and there is not compromise at the same time.
So say more about that.
Well, we are one thing. We live in a collective, whether we consciously believe that or not. We are, I walk down the street. It's not just my street. So I have to live in relationship to the collective. And so the way I move my arms is dependent on who's around me. I can choose to hit people, if I need to, but it has consequences. And so I have to live in that world of consequences. And so in a way, in a relationship, we are fundamentally trying to live the world that we believe in. What this practice says is that want to be in a world where there's transparency, where there's real clarity and real honesty. And so in this relationship here, you and I need that there's transparency and honesty, because that is the world that I believe in. That's the kind of place I want to live in. It's that, again, goes back to state, right? What's the state I want to be in? And again, so you have a negotiation, you have a discussion, and maybe for the other person that means some things, and for you that means something else. I'll give you a really basic example. I wash my clothes a certain way. My partner washes her clothes a certain way, and she has a certain expectation about how we dress, how we appear, how we go out, and it speaks to something for her, and it's important. And I can recognize the importance of the need for her. And it doesn't sit as heavy in my body because it's not as part of we're from two different cultures.
Yeah.
So her culture puts a heavier weight on that thing than my culture I grew up in. But I can recognize that it's important. And I can recognize maybe when she asked me to maybe wash my clothes a different way, or to dress a certain, or to think about how I dress or whatever, it's not just about how we appear in public, though that is a big thing. That is a big thing. There is something about taking care of myself, or something that maybe I haven't looked at closely enough because I'm avoiding to look at it, or whatever it is. So in this process of her asking, maybe my instinct is to say, no, it's not important for me. I don't need it. I'm quite fine. I'm 38 years old, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I could come up with a bunch of trite ways to say, leave me alone. Yeah, leave me alone. And then that brings up something around, okay, well, is this what my mom told me? Because I can feel some old tension there about how I need to present myself. And so in that moment, it's a compromise, but it's not a compromise. So I can understand the importance. I can understand there's something for me to look at, and I want to look at it, and we can have a discussion then. So, okay, maybe I don't really need to do this thing that you're asking me to do. But I want you to be okay. If you need to do something to make that okay, we can work on, So it becomes this thing where it's a compromise, but it's not a compromise. And we try to find a way where we can both get what we need. And maybe my clothes end up being a little bit presented in a slightly different way when we go out. And that's okay, because I've learned something, I've looked at something, and I'm not sacrificing what I need, maybe.
And so these kinds of examples feel really healthy from a relational point of view. And you've got to be open to reflection, and that personal reflection of where does this come from? Because if my automatic reaction is leave me alone, I'm going to wear what I want to wear, then without shutting the door on it, having a place to say, oh, that's interesting. Where does that come from?
Yeah.
So it's a curiosity about yourself, and also willingness to reflect, which not everybody's at that stage of personal development or learning or exploration. How does that translate into that dynamic of having a conversation? How does that translate into organizations? Because that level of intimacy is, if we're lucky, we'll find the person that we spend our lives with, or snapshots of our life with, where we can have that kind of, this is what I need from you, and this is why. Are you able to give me that? And let's have a conversation about it. That level of intimacy, and there's a vulnerability in opening up to say what you need. When we're looking at organizations, and particularly from a societal change perspective, how do we show up where the dynamics are hierarchical and the conversations tend to be, this is a manager or somebody in a kind of hierarchical power position saying, this is what I need from you, which is generally productivity based.
Hmm.
And or I need you to show up with XYZ characteristics. I need you to show up with XYZ capabilities, and I need you to meet ABC deadline.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily a two-way. There are some assumptions about codes of conduct and professionalism that often get overlooked, and that's a whole other issue about management styles and processes. But in the work that you do with organizations, and I think this idea of starting with the relational and seeing your colleagues as people rather than little productivity minions, um, is part of that. And looking each other in the eye and saying, what do you need? Like, and I've done these kind of exercises with teams, but I'm really curious about your take on that
Yeah.
because I think it shifts everything, but it's not a natural state of
Yeah.
not, and that's the same from whether it's a social enterprise or a startup to FTSE 100
Yeah.
company.
Yeah. Well, I'd be curious to hear from your experience, like what tends to be the tension point? Like if you had to say, okay, this is like if I look at 90% of my projects or 90% of my clients, almost all of them in communication are experiencing this tension. I mean, what do you like? What do you tend to see?
I think they're, well, like people who, from the corporate side, it's people who really care deeply about showing up and doing good work and having, particularly those with complex supply chains, they want to do right by the farmers that they work with. And I think there are some tensions around the bureaucracy of being part of a machine, a corporate like that corporate where you're spending more time on data and reporting than you are on the doing, for
Yeah.
example. You want to be able to spend time and reflect, but the pace at which you're being asked to move or the number of meetings don't allow maybe for the reflection. So that I need to be in less meetings. I
Mhm.
need decision making to happen in a different way. I need for my diary to allow for spaces for creativity and for exploration and for doing the work that moves us forward that is massively impactful. And so there's some real tensions. And then things like tariffs and costs and pricing, particularly in the geopolitical situation that we're existing in. And this is across FMCG in particular at the moment, is everyone's burdened. It feels really heavy.
Yeah, yeah,
And it doesn't feel like it's a lot of fun. Nobody's having fun.
yeah. From your experience working maybe also in the third sector, in the health
Mm-hmm.
sector, in the public sector in the UK, would you
Mm-hmm.
say that there's a similar kind of feeling of everyone feels a bit pressed, everyone's kind of overworked, underpaid. Not, I mean, not everyone, but a good majority of people are just like
I
working.
think from the social enterprise space, there's so much work to be done.
Yeah,
And money and funding is a challenge. And so I feel like there's a pressure on where's the funding coming from, where the finance is coming from, which I feel like I'm part of a space of opportunity for moving into self-sufficiency and alternative business models.
mm,
So it's how can we see the flip side of this
yeah,
and see, and so that's the bit that that I'm active in is how do we create the ventures, the enterprises that are regenerative, that can make money and be mission driven and have an
yeah.
impact. But those that aren't in that space are feeling a lot of pressure.
Sure, sure. I mean, fundamentally, the practice is about you taking or me taking responsibility for what I can take responsibility for. And in any relationship at work or so with your boss, with your colleague, with your collaborator, with with the distributor, with the
Mm-hmm.
farmer, whatever. We have a decision, we have a choice about how we want to show up in any particular relationship and what we're willing to ask for. And I guess the thing that is, again, really beautiful about this approach, this way of seeing relationships, is that ultimately it is about asking, being willing to ask for the world that you believe in, that you want, that you have a vision for, you know. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
want my child, I want my nephew, I want my neighbor's kid to grow up in this world, whatever that vision you have for the world,
Mm-hmm.
that is caring, that is connected, that is understanding, that is transparent and honest. And so I want to live those things right now in this moment, you know. I worked maybe 6, 7 years in the kind of social change
Mm-hmm.
world in the UK, specifically in London. So health, housing, education, etc., homelessness. Yeah. The discussion is almost always about the change that we will make in the future. We will be more, you and I talked a little bit about this.
Yeah.
We will be more sustainable. We will be more regenerative. We will be more whatever. The word changes. And it's not that those things aren't important, right? So we talk about this regenerative systems for soil maintenance and soil protection and regeneration is important. It's the you know, if we don't have healthy soil, we're not gonna do very well. So those things are important. But what is often overlooked in these discussions is how are we as a team right now showing up in this world? And if we want a world that is more regenerative, if we want a world that is more caring, that's more empathetic, that's more loving, it has to start in this meeting right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was never part of, almost never, I don't recall ever a discussion happening in that way.
No.
But the onus of change is on me as a leader and as a team right now. And again, this is the non-duality of existence, of the soul, of us as humans here on earth. That change happens now, 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 now. And it also happens in grand ways over some time. It's both.
Yeah.
And so what this way of communicating says is that, okay, I have this meeting now with my boss, and I want to live this vision of the world right now. And for me to be able to do that, to work beautifully, to have the time and the space, to be in relationship with the farmer, to have the kind of relationship I want with them, to do the quality work that's going to be needed to have regenerative soil in 10 years, whatever the vision is.
Yeah.
We have to right now have a regenerative relationship where I understand you, you understand me, and I can really clearly communicate from my heart what's important for me today, right now, for me to be able to live that kind of world. And maybe that means I need 4 hours blocked off every Tuesday morning for me just to be in relationship with that farmer. I need that 4 hours. Whatever it is,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. But the point is that it comes from a really deeply meaningful place that you are willing to stand up for and ask for. And oftentimes it's just a matter of that is, am I clear enough about what I need? So the actual need underneath it, the whatever that thing is that's important to me, really deeply meaningful. And can I be clear about the thing that you can give me for me to have that need? So again, the 4 hours every Tuesday morning. And that is as you started with your friend, that is a revolutionary act to do that from your heart, to say, okay, actually, what did I really need there? What am I willing to ask for the next time that thing happens? And that's the micro moment of change.
And so where there are like massive power dynamics
Mm-hmm.
on top of this, right? Because that sounds really beautiful, and it sounds like that could be the case in a healthy environment. And again, my need
But
would be I want to work in a healthy environment. All right.
sure.
So I saw that coming. Like, maybe you need to change your job. All right. So I need to work in a healthy environment. But the one that I'm in is one where there are hierarchies, power dynamics, I might be junior, or there are all these layers and I need to keep the lights on. So in that scenarios, it's hard for people. It feels like, is that wishful thinking? Or, I mean, I don't know, right? Because I'm playing devil's advocate with you, but I'm already answering the question in my head. So I'm just going to play the devil's advocate and
Well,
leave
what's the answer in your head?
that. No, but it's just if if you've got that conviction and it comes from an honest place, then trying to create the space for it would be my advice to somebody. And I've been in roles where I've voiced concerns, I've voiced a need, that need hasn't been met, and I've said, see you later. But I was senior enough to do it,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think. And so, but I can imagine that somebody younger and more junior might have been more hesitant.
Yeah, certainly. Certainly. Yeah. I think what you're asking is actually a question, is a spiritual question about trust and about our kind of movement through the world, right?
Hmm.
Which is what am I meant to learn right now? What is this thing, this job, this relationship with my boss showing me
Hmm.
about me and what I need to learn in this world? I mean, fundamentally, from my perspective, it is a question of the soul. You know,
Yep.
what is my soul here to learn right now? And okay, I'm
Hmm.
23 years old. I just graduated. I got a ton of debt, and I'm in this job. I don't like my boss. I don't like the culture. Not a lot is resonating in my body right now about this environment, this state. Okay, so I need this money. I'm not in a position of power. So what excites me about being here? If anything, what am I here to learn? What am I here to trust? You know, I believe that we are in our own ways finding that relationship to the soul. And so I'm
Hmm.
sure you and we found our own ways to ask that question. Whether we were listening or not is another thing.
Sure.
And but in that moment, yeah, certainly there's a lot of fear. Okay, I'm 30, 40,000 pounds in debt. I need this job. I need the experience. I don't have much sway. And maybe I don't have a really clear vision for my future. Maybe I haven't had great mentors, or I haven't had really conscious collective guidance from the community as maybe I would have had 200 years ago or whatever. And so there's confusion, there's a lack of clarity. And again, I believe this deeply, that there is something there for us to learn, whether it's a skill or a relationship that excites us, whether it's something that we are learning about ourselves in some way that
Mm.
moves us forward, or whether it's the fact that that's not the right path for us. Okay,
Hmm.
maybe working in the city for a venture capital firm is not my path. Or maybe I just need to be here in this moment to learn how capital markets work or how money flows just for a period of time, because I'm going to maybe it excites me. I'm excited about learning how currencies are traded, whatever it is,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. But that thing really excites me. The environment, the culture, my boss, none of it resonates. But this one thing is really interesting. And I want to just dig into that because my soul is telling me that I need to learn that. I need to understand that. And I will use it at some point in the future. And yeah, so this is just very, obviously it's a very specific example, but I believe that there are these kind of subtle ways in which our soul guiding us to be in a place of learning. I believe that all of it is for our learning, for our growth. And the question is how do we tap in and listen to what is useful and what's not useful? I mean, it is in a way that question of what is truth, what is not truth here. And can I listen to myself? Can I listen to my body? Can I really connect with my intuition, with my heart?
So then it becomes about reconciliation in a kind of, why am I here? And so that kind of deep understanding of why am I here? And so maybe I can't have those. like those outwardly conversations, but I can have, and you're talking about a conversation with self.
Mhm.
And this is something that's come up a lot for me over the last couple of weeks as I've been reading and learning a bit more about this. That actually, even though the idea of nonviolent communication or compassionate communication, on one level, or just like the titular level, feels like it's an external or it's with somebody else, actually, it comes down to a conversation with self.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think there's this like false, it's like having a facade of this is a process for like, come and we'll have nice conversations with other people.
Yeah.
But actually, the whole work is, it's sneaky. It's a little bit sneaky because it's about how you have conversations with yourself,
Yeah,
because it's
exactly.
a deep understanding, because it is the understanding your mind and reactions, which may be, from a neurological point of view, might be safety behaviors. To then think about your body and introspection and why is my body having this reaction and what is that telling me? To then that deep soul level that you're talking about, which sits under the introspection, which is your body's communication. That's your instinct place. That's your core
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
of, because I think in order to answer the question of what kind of state do I want to be in, that's a soul question
Yeah. Yeah.
fundamentally, because I can answer it in terms of environment or people I want to surround myself with or beauty and creativity that I want to experience and be exposed to. But the why of that is, why does that nourish me and why does that feed me?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe I don't know the answer right now, but I can feel in my body that it excites me, and so I have to trust that. And
It's
and what it's saying. I mean, this it's connected obviously to to the kind of NBC process, because the second part of the process is, what is my body telling me? And in not in those words. I mean,
Mhm.
Marshall Rosenberg doesn't use those words, but it is essentially saying, what is the intelligence of my body and my heart trying to guide me toward? And there's the answer again, you know, is could I might not understand that right away, but I have a sense, I have an intuition, I can move in that way because I'm listening, I'm building a sensitivity to that. And maybe it's just moving me towards a learning or a healing. You know, oftentimes the trigger, again, is just guiding you to another insight about yourself and what you are here to learn and heal. Most of the time, it's that. I mean, very often it's that, you know.
Mm.
And sometimes it's okay. You need to leave London, or you need now. It's okay. I'm ready to leave London. My body feels calm when I can feel that truth in my body. It's time to go, or whatever it is, you know. And what Rosenberg and what the ideology or the theory or the theology behind it is saying is that as you connect more with your body, as you go into what's painful and you listen and you just be with. So this thing I sent you about Krishnamurti is the whole
Mhm.
thing is, you know, Jiddu Krishnamurti was one of the great thinkers of the last 100 years. He's describing this. Rosenberg has taken the word violence from Krishnamurti.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, for Krishnamurti, nonviolence is about a being with what is. It's really simply that. It's being with what you are experiencing without the need to control it, to judge it, to move it, to shift it, to change it. It is simply a process. He doesn't use the word meditation because he understands the weight that comes with this word meditation and the visions that
Mm.
people create. This is why his books are really difficult his writing is really difficult to nail down, because he's describing God, he's describing this idea of meditation without using the words, because he knows how much conditioning is associated with those words. And so he is,
And that kind of bugged me a little bit
yeah, yeah,
because I watched a few of him in conversation from the 70s and they're really dense because it feels like he's skirting around the edges.
Yeah. Yeah, he's exactly what he's doing, and
Yeah.
he's exactly what he's doing. And when you get to the end, though, you can see at least the piece I sent you that he is trying to get people into a meditation to just
Mm-hmm.
be with the pain, be with the violence in themselves, the frustration, the anger, the tension, whatever movement is happening, and simply to observe it and to be in a different relationship with it. And he's saying that in that practice is sensitivity.
Yeah.
And in that, and as you build a sensitivity, you experience love because
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally it is about being in the calmness of your body, being in a peaceful relationship with what arrives, and being able to respond to it, not react to it. So response is a conscious choice. I have the ability to respond the way that I would like to respond. I'm not saying that this is something you just kind of do tomorrow, though you can do it tomorrow. Again, this is the non-duality. You can do it right now, but through some practice of sensitivity, of this awareness of the body and of emotions, and you are building again this sensitivity, this relationship with truth. Okay, what's true
Mm.
here? What is my body telling me? What am I? And I don't need to think about it because in that process of trying to control and think and solve is what Krishnamurti would call violence. But Rosenberg is not going to that level. Trying to provide something a bit, he's trying to provide something practical that you could use.
I think there's something about this acceptance of violence as a state and that duality. It's the yin and the yang. It's light and darkness. You know, you can only recognize compassionate conversations if you understand what a violent one is
Yeah.
or what violent reactions are.
Yeah.
And I think the broadness, and I think there's something about the broadness of that word in terms of what is violent as well. I listened to him talk about that, and he's got a very broad definition of violence: dispute, disagreement, um, passive aggression. You know, these are all violent acts
Yeah.
in his thinking around it. And so I think there's something in that as well. There's that friction in it,
Mhm.
which makes it interesting when you then bring in other characters, where you then realize we're all just a series of people who are trying or not, or we're at different stages of a process.
Mm. Yeah.
And I feel like I can have better reactions or more considered reactions if I'm reading something. But when we get into active conversation, that's where it becomes and multi kind of multicultural,
Yeah.
multi-contextual, multi-states, in your words, of what, you know, people wanting different states to be in. Then that commonality of teasing out that what is the common feature here, what's the common value, what's that common purpose, what brings you into the space and into the room, and that true intention
Yeah.
has to be the starting place
Mhm.
if you're going to break through to create
Yeah.
anything real.
Yeah. Well, what do you think that is? I mean, like just thinking about teams, even, like what is that one common starting place?
I think it's what, so an exercise I did when I was facilitating recently, and I use this a lot, is I ask people to bring an object, like a personal object
Mhm.
that represents why they're in that room. Like, how have you ended up being in a room discussing regenerative agriculture or collective philanthropy or whatever, whoever I'm working with. And so I start with the personal.
Mm.
And I've seen people who've worked with each other for like a decade not see each other until that moment. It's like, oh, I never knew that about that person.
Yeah.
And you've been working in the same office for a decade.
Right. Right.
And so then it's about what is that feeling that that's evoked in you. And as we move to talk about strategy, or if we move to talk about value chains and we move to talk about developing actions, this feeling of it's deeply personal, why I'm here today. It's not about business. It's not about the paycheck. It's not about, there's a conviction. Then, unless we've got a tingle and you've got a feeling associated with the actions going forward, we're not going to do it.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because if you don't have that same feeling, then we're not into it. And then we'll develop, we can develop these ideas. It means they need more work or they
Yeah.
need to be ditched. But unless it's making you tingle in the same way,
Yeah. Can you imagine that on the wall, like a banner on the wall of the team?
yeah, it was where's your tingle? And it's and it's it has to be that visceral because if unless it is, then nobody's going to back it. Nobody's going to say and get excited about it, to your point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And to really drive it. And that was with a team.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've done the same with like full kind of organization teams as well.
I think that's spot on. I mean, I don't think that that is the kind of standard operating for 99% of the organizations, which is, okay, are we excited about this? Like, can you feel this in your body? Can we just take a moment to close our eyes? When I say this thing, how does that resonate in you or not resonate? Or, like you're essentially asking people to connect with their body, connect with their intuition.
Hmm. Yeah, I had this very cool image of this skull, kind of creepy looking face that had half its brain taken out, and it was like the nervous system. And it was like, right, we're having a 3-minute sense check. Close your eyes. How do you feel?
Yeah.
You're right. It's not the normal way of corporate behavior. And I didn't use any words like introspection or
No,
or
you didn't use the word aligned or
there was no alignment. It was a sense check.
sure.
And that was it. Because you need like it was just you I don't need to get into that. But we'll have a conversation afterwards once you've had an experience about what the experience was that you've just had.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that is what we've been talking about, isn't it? That if
Hmm.
you start with what is your purpose here actually, not just here in the organization, but on this earth as a soul. Obviously, you don't you choose your words wisely, obviously, but I think that's what makes the process also difficult for people, is that we collectively, individually have had very few guided moments of introspection in that way. That,
Hmm.
okay, you've been given a name, and that name is important because the name, this is not a new thing, right? Like the name carries a meaning. The name, you have some purpose here on earth,
Hmm.
and your life will reveal moment by moment what that is. And it's also, again, non-dualistic. So your purpose is also to be right here, right now, present in this relationship. And that is simply not, it's not taught, it's not guided. And in that, in some ways, we have lost that process of, okay, why am I here now? It's a bit cliche in the kind of business world now, the kind of question of why. And it's cliche because it is, when people ask it, it's not about why are you here on earth, it's about, okay, why am I at this meeting, why am I on this job, why am I doing this project, which are really important questions. What I would like to get to in my work and with my clients is, what is the world that you want to create and what are you willing to ask for, which is the same question as asking why are you here.
Hmm.
And can I guide you and offer you some tools and my perspective and what I'm observing, what I'm hearing, what I'm intuiting, that can guide you to be able to ask for that and to communicate that. And then also maybe to hear that in the experience of other people as well. I recognize what you need. I recognize you're feeling angry. I recognize maybe you're a bit sad. I can feel your frustration. And maybe you need something else. And in that process is change, is radical change right here, right here, right here, right here, right here. And that is I think that is fundamentally why we're here, is to understand that and to move in that direction of expansion, like the universe is expanding, we too are moving in, it's a kind of natural, it's a natural state of the universe.
And do you think, because there's so many different modalities that are asking for this, that are guiding people into the similar things, which is that inner reflection. It's kind of like there's a Western framing to make these, I was going to say Eastern, but they're not just Eastern, these global community connection, particularly to spirituality, that maybe people have shied away from, or the individualistic consumption-based models that have been created over the last few decades has ruptured in a Western society perspective. And there is this kind of making the spiritual more palatable.
Mm. Yeah.
So there's a bit of a dumbing down, but does that matter?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a dumbing down as much as it is, as maybe much as it is a reinterpretation or a different paradigm. So there are a lot of things, for example, that yogis in South Asia for a long time maybe understood about, or even, not just in South Asia, a lot of cultures understood maybe about physics, and specifically quantum physics, for example. And now here we have our own paradigm through which we are discovering some of these dynamics of quantum physics. But these are not surprising. These things that we are discovering in science are not surprising to certain cultures, not in the West, because there are certain traditions of knowing of truth that have been lived, and maybe that we would have lived in the West as well in certain kind of pre-science cultures, in more in more kind of ritualistic coming of age cultures where people understand intuitively and experientially that we exist, for example, in not just in one place at one time, but that, an atom, for example, can exist here connected to something, and the movement of one immediately impacts the movement of the other. So what I would say then to your point then in that example, it's a reinterpretation, it's a rediscovering of truth. We're just trying to get to truth, right? So maybe a certain yogic tradition would have already understood some of these quantum principles because they have firsthand experience of whatever I don't want to give examples because but whatever of a yogi existing in one place at one time and at the same exact time existing in another place, right? So we would call that magic, but this is part of the yogic tradition in some written forms, and maybe still exist. And we are experiencing the same exact thing in quantum physics through this discovery of how atoms and how energy moves and how. So I would just say it's just a different interpretation of.
I think there are two things there, because there's a different interpretation, and if you read, like, I was reading like Buckminster Fuller or Schumacher. And you think these guys were talking about this a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
we need to sort our shit out in the West. And it feels a little bit depressing when you kind of relook at this works from decades ago and you're thinking, yes, to all of this, it didn't get traction at the time, but now we can revisit it and look at the kind of the teachings and the learnings.
And what I'm doing is the same thing. It's saying, okay, there's something fundamentally human about what Krishnamurti for me is trying to communicate, and there's truth there, and I can feel and experience truth when I when I connect with what he's saying. I don't always understand everything, but what
Yeah.
I do understand, it lands. And maybe that is from a South Asian tradition. Maybe it's from a East Asian tradition. Maybe that kind of tradition was also alive here um, in kind of pre-Christian traditions
Sure.
throughout. And so it's not, for me, it's not so important where that thing comes from. I just experience it as truth, and I can see how the way that I've been able to implement it in my life, the ways that I've been able to shift my relationships, grow, heal, feel better, just feel better in my body, you know.
Hmm.
Even something as simple as like I just feel much better than I did 15 years ago or whatever. And so that is a validation. You know, I told you earlier, I went to get my eyes checked and yesterday, and my prescription moved from 2.25 to 1.25. So it's a whole unit
Yeah.
improvement in my vision. I'm in my late 30s. It's not normal. And and when the doctor told me that, the only thing that came to mind was, "Oh, you're healing." It was really clear. And so what I know to be true then is how I've been living my life, at least the last 3 to 5 years. Something is healed, something has changed, and I can recognize that in my relationships. I can recognize that in my work, in the clarity that I have, in what I'm seeing in myself and what I'm seeing in the world around me. And I can experience that truth in my body because
Hmm.
I'm building a sensitivity to it. And and so to your point about, okay, well, where does that come from? And do I need to know the source of that? Or I think the source is, I'll use the word God. I think
Yeah.
the source is truth. The source is my soul. The source is nature, is everything around me, whatever, however you want to kind of define all that is. And it's found its way into culture. It's found its way into people like Krishnamurti and you sharing this podcast and all of the different ways that we manifest learning and insight and awareness and what I described earlier, which I believe is our kind of collective purpose here, is to be of service, to create gorgeously. And in that process of learning and growing, we are able to serve more beautifully, to create gorgeously, to be in a more loving state. Um, and so I guess that's kind of the way I perceive that.
I love the way you perceive things. I'm really grateful for it because it's deeply hopeful.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I think it's the nature of the universe is growth and learning and love. I believe that at my core. And so I have to believe that for this part of the universe.
and it's a real contrast to where we started this conversation
Yeah.
because we were talking about conflict and genocide and how do we show up with all of that. And I think you've it's a massive reminder of you can only show up as you. And if you're willing to take yourself on an exploration inside and have conversations with yourself about what you want and what kind of world you want to live in and who you want to be, then there's not just hope for our eyesights, but it's hope for, but just I think there's a thing, I think the word healing gets used a lot as well. But I think the way that you talk about it is there's a depth to it because it feels like a 360
Mm.
clean out that doesn't just shape outlook, but it then translates into how you show up in service,
Mm. Yeah.
of each other, of then community, of then planet, of then, and seeing the nonsensical in a lot of the geopolitics around the world. I think there's hope in that kind of standing your ground of what do I want, what do I need.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Well put. Yeah.
And I think that's the only kind of interesting. It's made me think about how I'm going to respond to more of these conversations. I feel calmer having spoken to you about it.
I agree.
I do feel more at peace. But yeah, you don't want to shy away from them. And there is a stepping into, but in a productive way, in a what do we see and what do we want? And I think next time, because it's not like I'm not going to have these conversations again or get pissed again, but maybe there's a next time it's that maybe I'll open with a what's the world you want to see and what's the world you want to be a part of.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Wonderful. Thanks, Deepa. Thanks. It's a beautiful way to close, and I've enjoyed the chat. And yeah, really, really lovely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If this conversation sparks something in you, don't let it end here. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, or better yet, gather your people and dive deeper into these ideas together. The world changes one meaningful conversation at a time. If you'd like to join one of our group order sessions, keep an eye on our website, which is www.deepermeaningful.co, or sign up to our monthly newsletter and be the first to know what's coming up. The Udder is brought to you by the Deep and Meaningful Consultancy. Our music is from the song Unreasonable World by Bernard Schimpelsberger.